Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back from lunch. We are about to start the fourth and final session for this go-round of ChangeWorks Essentials. What I'd like to do in this final session is to talk to you in a bit finer detail about how you go about establishing the ideal location for an activity to plot on the ChangeGrid, and then how you go about moving someone from wherever they are to that particular location. So we're going to be talking about choosing desired locations for activities and ChangeGrid maneuvers. Now, I certainly have a PowerPoint presentation around this whole thing, but we seem to be looking more and more at ChangeGrids in order to help you explore this idea of ideal locations. I'm going to go back to the energy layer because that's the layer we seem to use the most when it comes to establishing the ideal location. So let me scroll up here a little bit. Da, 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 da. All right. So I need all of you to participate in this next little section. I'm going to put you in a couple of scenarios, and I just want you to tell me where you think a particular activity would best be plotted. So now let me remind you that humans experience four different major energies. So the driver energy we talked about in quite a bit of detail. The driver energy wants to make something happen. The driver energy wants to go somewhere, wants to do something, tends to be quite task oriented and very forward moving. And so that driver energy compelling things to move forward. The expressive energy wants to feel something. It wants to feel something, whether it's physical, emotional, intellectual. It wants to be vital and vibrant. It wants to express what it's feeling. So lots of things that are motivating, inspiring, that sort of energy definitely resonates with that expressive energy. Um, the amiable energy wants to care. And so this is the energy that makes us turn and look at our fellow humans and um, compels us to want to support them in whatever way we can. So the amiable energy wants to care about someone or something and invests very heavily in supporting whatever that cause or that individual may be. And then the analytical energy is the fourth one. The analytical energy wants to know something and wants to understand something. And once it has all that knowledge and understanding, the analytical energy likes to collect it and process it and maybe play with it on occasion, but mostly it just likes to have it. So these are the four energies. Now we're going to apply these energies to the task of determining the ideal location on the change grid. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of scenarios, and I just want you to tell me which energy would you assign to this particular task. So here's the first scenario. You work with a company that is going to participate in a trade show. And this trade show, you're going to have a booth at it, and there's going to be all kinds of great prospects and clients that are going to be there. You have to decide who you're going to staff the booth with. And so you have four choices. You can staff the booth with a person who is an expressive when it comes to running a trade show booth. You also could pick a driven expressive. You could pick an expressive driver, or you could pick a driven driver. So when it comes to staffing your trade show booth, which of these energies do you think would do the best natural job of doing what we want to have happen at a trade show booth? So it's got to be, engaging. It's got to be friendly. It's got to be fun. It has to be, business oriented. I mean, we're there for a reason. So what would you say? Which one of these people would you put in charge of your trade show booth? So get some answers coming in here. I got a vote for expressive driver, another vote for expressive driver, another vote for expressive driver, vote for driven expressive. Interesting. Another vote for driven expressive. Right now, I've got, let's say, oh, more coming in, more coming in. I've got, okay, half of you are saying expressive drivers and the other half are saying driven expressives. I think it's very interesting that no one wants to put a driven driver in charge of your booth. Now, why would you hesitate to put a driven driver in charge of your booth? Now, again, we're not talking about their personality, but as far as this activity is concerned of staffing that booth, running that booth, why would that driven driver energy be one you would want to avoid? Let's see. So, getting some comments here. Well, because they're not really all that relationship oriented. They're not tending to the relationships. They're not focused on others. I love these contributions. Um, they have an issue with interacting with people, so they might alienate the customers. They might scare people away. They might come on too strong for the clients to show up. They may create a stressful sphere. Very interesting way to put it, Dragon. Very good. Very good. Yeah. Well, they're just too task focused, and so they'd be like really pushing whatever the booth's agenda is, and certainly we want that to be an outcome. But we don't want people to feel as though they're being pushed away and being, corralled into doing something they might not choose to do. So the driven driver is just too intense, too intense. I also noticed you didn't want to put an expressive on the task. So why don't you want to put an expressive running your booth? Why would the expressive energy not fare all that well for someone who's running this trade show booth? Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. You're going to go because they've got the opposite problem. They're not task oriented at all. Uh, they have. Oh, here is a great observation. They don't have enough ability to handle the job. They don't. Their perceived level of ability, and up in expressive. They rated their ability as being very low, 0, 1, 2, or 3, and they view the challenge as being 9, 10, 11, or 12. So they are unfamiliar with this. They're uncomfortable in this. They are ill prepared to handle it, and they're going to come across as this very expressive, lots of nervous energy, lots of anything but confidence instilling dialogue. They might talk too much with no results, and they might talk about stuff that's got nothing to do with business at all. And it's one thing to be socially astute; it's another thing to never get around to talking about business. And I believe that an expressive would probably avoid bringing the subject of business up because they recognize they are ill prepared to handle whatever those kinds of questions may be. They're not all that goal oriented. Very good. Yeah, their goal is to survive the moment, and that's true for all expressives, not just in the trade show booth, but the expressive just wants to survive. They're in a very difficult situation and have no ability to really handle it. So not very goal oriented other than just survive themselves. They don't want to hear an endless spiel. And that's the thing is that an expressive would just start talking and talking and talking. They may be so excited they want to talk too much and not ask questions. Exactly right, Betty. And so you guys are giving really, really wonderful insight. So this tells me you understand what these subtle differences are. So again, half of you were building a case for the driven expressive, and half of you were building a case for an expressive driver. Let's see if we can resolve that issue. And I think the way that we want to resolve that issue is by looking at what's the difference between those two. The difference between the driven expressive and the expressive driver. So, well, I'll tell you right now, what they have in common is that they both see the challenges being the same. They both see the challenges being quite high. Again, to plot in either one of those areas, you'd have to view the challenges being 10, 11, 12. So they both agree that there's plenty of challenge here. So, in what way are they different? Well, the driven expressive perceives themselves as having a lower level of ability than the expressive driver does. In fact, it is probably that greater perception of their ability that's making them move in the energetic continuum more towards the driver energy and letting the expressive energy go into the secondary position. Where when we've got someone who views themselves as having a lower level of ability, they're going to hold back a little bit. They're going to compensate for that perceived lack of ability by being more expressive, more engaging, more what say inspiring and motivating, influencing. So a lot more schmooze going on, things like that. And so when you look at that difference about the perceived level of ability, would you rather put the driven expressive or the expressive driver in charge of your booth? Mhm. Oh yeah. In fact, Betty made a comment here. Great description of that nervous energy when someone doesn't perceive they're competent. It is a very predictable human coping mechanism. Whenever we find ourselves in a situation where our perceived level of ability is less than we feel the situation at hand demands, we turn on the charm. So we become more personable. We become more gregarious, more expressive, and everything that comes along with that. We also start to put the emphasis or put the spotlight on other people. So as you transition from being a driven expressive to an expressive driver, you stop talking so much about yourself and start exploring others. So you start to ask more questions. So that nervous energy is also on its own little continuum. That's great. Um, they might ask more questions as well. Well, and that's it. See, the expressive driver is primarily a driver. They want to make something happen. And that secondary energy always answers the question, how do I go about making it happen? And the expressive energy says, I'm going to make it happen by being engaging and enthusiastic and passionate and open and expressive and all those sorts of things. And so they're going to be very lively, very much asking questions and then showing value and that. So I think you guys are on track here. So now at least saying now this is when it's getting fun. Exactly right. And so these subtleties are what we want. So I guess we are now looking a little bit more towards the expressive driver. Bob is sharing. I guess it depends on the outcome you want. Well, and so let's just talk about that because you're absolutely right. And I'm just giving you guys some general activities just to get you thinking along these lines. But my personal vote would be the expressive driver. The expressive driver is because primarily they're a driver. They know we are there for business purposes and we are there to accomplish some sort of business outcome. But this is a trade show and it's supposed to be upbeat and energetic and fun. It's a dynamic environment. It's a different sort of a thing for the people that are attending whatever this conference is, where this trade show happens to be being held. So I like that expressive energy there. They're going to be friendlier. They're going to be more excited. All those other words I've already used at least a half a dozen times. So that would be my personal choice. So if I said to you, though, one person can't handle the booth, let's go ahead and bring somebody else. Now, if I had another expressive driver and I was only interested in getting the greatest return on my investment at a trade show booth, I'd probably send another expressive driver to do that. But if I don't have another one, or let's say, getting back to what Bob was saying here about depends what the outcome is, I'd like to also use this as a learning opportunity for some more junior members of my staff. And so maybe I will send that driven expressive along. But I'm going to tell the driven expressive that they are going to be second chair, that the expressive driver is the one who's really running the booth. They are the top the top representative for this particular event. But I want this person to observe what that expressive driver is saying and doing so that they can learn. And next time around, maybe they can be the expressive driver, the person who's running the booth. So I definitely think that the driven expressive could benefit from being there and could be quite useful. But there are times when I would want them to hand off to the expressive driver simply because the expressive driver would report a higher level of ability to accomplish the actual goals of the booth as I've just stated them. So does that make sense about including the other person as kind of like number two? Yeah, getting some good comments here. So um, do we want them to make friends or sell them something? Well, ultimately, we want them to sell something, but along the way in a trade show environment, we do want them to be building those relationships. So a little friendly goes a long way. And that's what I'm saying. Like, both of them would probably do an adequate job. But if I have both to pick from, I definitely want the person who has a higher perceived level of ability. Let's see. Yeah, prospecting versus closing. Yep, 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 yep. Okay. All right, now, if I have a very large booth and I need a whole team of people, I might even bring an expressive with me. But tell me what kind of tasks you would be comfortable entrusting to an expressive at this trade show environment. Now, again, look what they're saying. Challenge is very high. We're all in agreement on that. But they're saying now their ability is to really run the booth is very, very low. So, what tasks might we have them do that would be of benefit to our overall objective and could be a nice little learning experience for them? So, how would you use the expressive? Pardon me, one moment. Never had allergies till we moved south. Okay, so let's see, getting some comments here. I like the expectations that you said for the driven expressive. So they're competing for airspace. Exactly right. So let them learn. Let them rise to the occasion. Yes, Deb is suggesting that we could use the expressive to just bring people into the booth. So let's put them, out there on the edges, or let's let them work the floor and actually invite people in because we know they're very expressive. They're very enthusiastic, and they've got all that going for them. And certainly that translates into some real interactive kind of people sorts of skills. So, but let's make sure that we manage expectations. We just say to them, your job is to greet people when they come into the booth and to introduce those people to whoever the driven expressive is or the expressive driver that happens to be in the booth. So you guys are absolutely right. Let them greet people. Pardon me. Just talk to people, then hand off. Exactly right. You guys are straight on board here. We might even have them run a couple of errands. Now that driven driver. I don't want to think that they could have no role whatsoever at a trade show, but they could be a rather, I want to just say, overly aggressive creature in the trade show booth itself. But a lot of these big shows, particularly for vendors who have invested heavily in their trade show presence, will often book a hospitality suite. So you guys, I'm sure, have gone to these kinds of things. A hospitality suite is a separate room elsewhere in the hotel that has been set up with, pardon me, some sort of beverages and hors d'oeuvres, and you can suggest that certain people go up to the hospitality suite. So it's by invitation only. Now, up there, the assumption is that if you're in the hospitality suite, it's because we view you as being serious. So you're either an existing customer that we're trying to strengthen a relationship with, or you are a prospective customer that we're really trying to impress in as many ways as we can. So there is basically an expectation. It's just kind of like it's just quietly acknowledged or silently acknowledged that if you're at a hospitality booth, it's because you're there for business purposes. Now, that's where I might want to put my driven driver, because my driven driver is someone who's going to say, you got questions about business? You want to know how this would actually work for you? Let's talk. We can talk right now. And so they could end up closing a deal. Generally speaking, deals are not closed, pardon me, in a trade show booth, and they're really closed after the event is over and done with, or they're closed up there in that hospitality suite. Okay, pardon me, sorry. Okay, so what you guys have just done then is determined the ideal location for staffing a trade show booth. And you said, if I could get someone who is anywhere inside of this expressive driver quadrant, we'd be doing pretty well. So we don't even need to go as fine detailed as the adjective map. We can just say, pardon me, that as long as we've got someone who's plotting in this general vicinity of the expressive driver, we got ourselves a pretty good situation. Now, let me give you another scenario, and let's exercise it now. Now, here the scenario is a little bit different. You still work for a company, but this company has just completed a rather long and expensive change management initiative. And at the end of this change management program, it was determined that a certain specific change was going to be deployed across the entire organization. And we need someone who is going to head up that transition team. And so this individual is going to have to be a bit of a leader to kind of direct everyone in the right way. They're going to have to be a good salesperson because this change is going to, please some people and disturb others. They're going to need to be able to put the people who are worried at ease and answer whatever questions they might have. We do need to make sure this gets done because this change has to happen. And so we need someone who's going to see it through in a way that minimizes any kind of conflict with people during this whole change. So get the idea? So that's what we're looking for. Now, I'm going to give you 4 people you can pick from to put in charge of this rollout, in charge of this deployment. Now, your 4 choices are: you can put a driven driver in charge of it, you can put an analytical driver in charge of it, you can put a driven analytical in charge of it, or an analytical. And again, I know I keep making it sound like I'm describing the person. It's really how this person is responding to that particular activity. That's just too many words to keep saying over and over. So would you want, okay, the activity is to lead the deployment of this change organization wide. So lead, that's the activity. Lead this deployment. Now, we've got one person who is plotting in driven driver around it. So you got a driven driver energy available to you for that activity. You have an analytical driver energy available to you. You have a driven analytical energy available to you. And you have an analytical energy available to you. So which of those 4 people do you want to put in charge of your rollout? Now, keep in mind what they all have in common, all 4 of those have in common is they all report a high level of ability to do it. They can all do it, they have the ability, but they see varying levels of challenge in the task. So, do you wish to favor the driven driver energy, the analytical driver, the driven analytical, or the analytical when it comes to leading the deployment or rollout of an organization wide change? Interesting. Well, Bob is suggesting the amiable driver. Not a choice I gave, but okay, I like that. I'll be very curious to know why you've made that choice in a second. But analytical driver, analytical driver, analytical driver. No, Bob's gonna be analytical driver. Bob, you might be able to build a case for amiable driver, so that's fine. We can talk about that in just a moment. Sorry about my throat, everybody. Analytical driver, analytical driver. Look at all the analytical drivers. You guys are pretty much unanimous that analytical driver is who you would have in mind. So let me ask you, why wouldn't you put a driven driver in charge of this rollout? What is it about that energy that would not support our objective? Okay. They would not be understanding or even tolerant of resistance. If a driven driver gets pushed back, the driven driver pushes even harder. Um, we need him to take the people with him, willingly with him. In our program Pride Based Leadership, we quote a lot of famous people with their viewpoints about change, and I believe, pardon me, it was Eisenhower who said that leadership is the art of getting people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it. And I think that's what we're talking about here. We need to get people to do what we need them to do, but we got to get them to do it because they want to do it. And the driven driver energy is not really all that interested in what other people are thinking, saying, or feeling. As long as they're compliant, then the driven driver is probably satisfied. They're too driven, too task focused. They're not able to scan the status. They grow impatient with people. They get pushy. They pull rank. Dealing with human dynamics of change, which is why I would likely prefer the amiable driver. Yeah, we'll talk. I was going to throw that in a second. Okay. An analytical driver could be more strategic, right? See, the analytical driver is likely to come up with a plan and likely to explain the plan, execute the plan. They're likely to anticipate what the pushback is going to be, what resources are going to be required, etc. The driven driver is not responsive to making adjustments to move the change forward, where the analytical driver is always monitoring things to be able to adjust course. Okay, now I noticed that you guys also didn't want to send the analytical. on this task? What's wrong with the analytical energy when it comes to leading this deployment of this change across the organization? Why not the analytical energy? Mhm. Okay, great observation you guys are making here. I like this one in particular that you're going like, well, they're plotting down where they are hypo-aware. So you're actually looking at one layer and talking about a different layer, and I love that because honestly, as you start to learn more about the layers, it becomes increasingly difficult to limit what you're saying to just the one layer. We look at all the layers at once, so we talk about our insights about all the layers at once, and that's just going to naturally happen as you read more and more ChangeGrid. So I think that's really great. I show you one layer, and you're giving me input from another one. But you're absolutely right. This person is disengaged. And analytical is disengaged when it comes to doing the work. Do they know their stuff? Absolutely. Could they do it? Probably. Are they going to jump out of bed in the morning and go like, oh, I can't wait to lead this initiative? No. Let's see. So here's some of the comments. Endless analysis, no drive, no change. Some of you are saying that they really understand it better than anyone else, but they don't have that human element to be able to really sell or move this forward. Not a lot of energy to actually get things done. In fact, how gung ho do you think the analytical even is? About the change. I mean, they are plotting down in apathy about leading this initiative. Betty Shane, they may not be able to move from thinking about the change to acting upon it or getting other people to act upon it. And you guys are still pointing me towards the amiable driver. So I promise to get there in just a second because I was going to build a case for that one too. All right, now, usually when I throw this question out to a group, I get a bunch of people who suggest the driven analytical as well. And so let's just for a moment, although you guys all chose analytical driver, and I agree with that choice, there is a belief that the driven analytical would do a really good job of this as well. But I'm kind of curious, why would you guys have chosen an analytical driver over a driven analytical? And again, we're talking about the energy, not the person. Why would we favor the analytical driver instead of the driven analytical? Yeah, because the analytical driver is more focused on the task. And again, they're in charge of making sure this implementation occurs. So we got to make sure, on behalf of the company, we got to make sure this person is primarily a driver around this activity. Yep, you guys are all resonating with that. Now, one of you, though, pointed out something else. Wait, let's do this. They may be more interested in the facts of change than making the change event. Yes, and this is where we're getting to. Remember, as we move further and further down grid, our driver energy starts to diminish and the analytical energy gets stronger and stronger. And so right now we got that dynamic. One of you pointed out that the analytical driver views a higher level of challenge and is is plotting engaged, where the driven analytical is slipping from engagement down to, in fact, let's switch the background. As you move down that side, you go from being engaged, and right here would be that analytical driver, to being intention and awareness. Right there is that driven analytical. And the analytical is just all about downgrid awareness and hypo awareness. So I think this is really great. You guys are kind of seeing insights from multiple layers or pulling insights from multiple layers. Now, that being said, I'm in total agreement. We want to put the analytical driver in charge of it based on the choices that I gave you. There is still a role for the driven analytical. I would say to the analytical driver, this is you see a more challenge in this, and so we want to make sure that you are working with and then tell them the driven analytical because they've done it before, and so they view it as being a bit easier. Maybe you can use them as a go-to person with any kind of questions or whatever, but we want the analytical driver to take the lead. They're going to view it as more of a growth experience. They're more engaged around doing it, and they've got more of that driver energy we're really looking for. Now, many of you have brought up the amiable driver as a choice. Now, the amiable driver is still a driver, so they're going to make things happen. The amiable driver, though, is going to do it by putting very much emphasis on the people that are involved and how this affects the people. So that could be very useful. But it's missing something. It's missing that analytical part. And so, why could that analytical part be so important? Well, obviously, we're talking about rolling out a change, and so there does need to be some sort of grand process. We do need timelines. We do need benchmarks. We need to be able to somehow gauge the degree to which the change has been implemented, and we need to be determining what the impact of that change was. So there's a lot of analytical bits and pieces that are associated with this sort of a deployment. In fact, this deployment may be so big that we may need to put multiple people on the deployment team. On that team, I would definitely want some amiable drivers because they're the ones that we could very effectively leverage whenever we have someone who feels that they're going to be losing a lot of control or doesn't understand how this change is going to affect their job or their job security or anything like that. So it could be very handy to have that amiable driver type there to be that supportive person that people may need as they go about adjusting to whatever the change happens to be. In fact, week from Saturday, yeah, week from tomorrow, I'm doing a big presentation in Atlanta for the Organizational Change Association. And this is one of the things we're really talking about. When a company has decided to do one of these larger change implementations, how do you go about dealing with people's resistance to change? So, right there, they're going into this talk with this mistaken belief that people are resistant to change. So, I got to fix that first and foremost and say, no, 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 none of these people are resistant to change. Any resistance you're encountering is about how this change is affecting their sense of control. Nobody wants to lose control. Not everyone's resisting. Some people rallied for this. Well, those are the people who thought they were going to gain control as a result of this. And so let's give up this belief that people are resistant to change. It's about control, and then obviously it's also about tension management once we move beyond that initial pushback. Let's see, getting some comments here. Would it be more useful if they were moving up grid? Yeah, now, isn't that interesting? Let's say that I've got a change that I need the organization to make. And right now, everyone is down in apathy throughout the organization. And this change is really intending to get this person out of apathy, just get our team out of apathy. So now I'm going to allow you to choose from any of the 16. But it's still, I'm trying to get the organization to make some sort of purposeful change. They're all deep, deep down in apathy. I got to put someone in charge of this. What type of energy would you want to put in charge of an implementation where the population could not possibly care less? Now, who do you want to put in charge of it? Ah, the gifted students program. All right, so here's how we go about approaching this. Okay, as I think about that task, first thing I want to answer is what should the primary energy be? Okay, so um, we need to make sure this change occurs, and the group of people that I've got to get on board are all down in apathy around it. What is the primary energy I'm going to need in order to make this happen? The answer is, you guys are all weighing in accurately on this one, driver. I need that driver energy because, again, there's still a job to be done, a task that needs to be completed. So I've just narrowed it down. Now, again, I got a bunch of people that are down in apathy. Who is going to be more likely to get them out of apathy? The analytical driver, the amiable driver, the expressive driver, or the driven driver? So, what kind of an energy do I think would really do the best job of awakening the dead? How am I going to get that energy built up there? Now, let's see if we can rule out any of these. How would a driven driver handle a group of people that are down in apathy about this implementation? What would the driven driver do? What would that energy do? Yeah, so instead, well, they'd be General Patton. They would simply demand it. They would beat them into submission. They would slap them silly. Okay, that's right. Yeah, literally, figuratively. Yeah, they would just say, "Do it. I don't really care how you feel about it. You're going to do it. If you don't want to do it, leave." So they're not going to really lead the change. They're just going to like deliver it as an ultimatum and let people deal with it. How would an analytical driver handle the people that are deep down in apathy about the change? What would an analytical driver try to do to change that around? You guys are sharing. They would share the facts. They would try to prove the case. They would try to, um, okay, yeah. So they would try to encourage debate that they would win. Yeah. So yeah, you guys are good. They would basically try to prove their way, convince you to do it by a preponderance of the evidence. So here's why we did it. Here's why we want to do it. Here's what's going to happen. Here's, they would try to just kind of sell you on it by giving you all those all that detail, all that factual kind of stuff. They give you the facts and encourage you to move forward. Yep, you get great comments, everyone. So now that leads me to the amiable driver and the expressive driver. So now the amiable driver, when confronted with a group of people that are deep down in apathy, again, they're still a driver. Make no mistake about it. They want to make the outcome happen. How do they want to go about making the outcome happen, though? They're amiables. They want to do it by making sure everyone's on board. So, how many of you think they could basically turn this whole situation into a big counseling group? Yeah. And you see that they would really want to kind of sell each person the individual level about why this is important to them and why this is really the right thing for the customers and the right thing for the suppliers and the right thing for the coworkers. So, they would come at it from a very caring place. Pardon me. Oh, pollen. Um, let's see, Betty's sharing here. They can appeal to someone's more emotional side. Exactly. They'd really want to understand why why do these people feel so disconnected from all this? And so the amiable driver would be a very supportive person that would still be trying to say, let's move forward, let's move forward. It'll be okay. We're aware of this. We want to support you, etc. But that expressive driver, which you guys have now all kind of leaned towards, go like the expressive driver would be more inspiring. They'd be more motivating. They would create more movement, more physical and emotional, intellectual energy around it. So, yep, you guys are absolutely right. Okay. So you're getting the idea about how we go about determining where we want someone to be on the change grid. So, pardon me. I'm going to give you another couple of scenarios just to kind of put this to the test. You need to have your taxes prepared. Um, if the task was to have the most accurate tax preparation completed, which energy would do the best job, just primary energy? Which of the four energies would do the best job of putting together an accurate tax filing? Okay, so you guys are all given like, well, that analytical energy, you're all in agreement, the analytical energy. Now, that should be the primary energy because if the task is all about accuracy, no one's going to be more accurate than an analytical because the analytical knows the information. They've got a very high level of ability and they don't see it all that challenging. They know their stuff and they know that they know their stuff. Well, the problem with that energy all by itself is that there's no hurry, there's no deadline. I mean, they know their stuff and they know their stuff. And so it's readily available to them. It's right in front of them. So if I change the task slightly and say, I need to get my taxes done as accurately as possible, but no later than April 15th. Now, what secondary energy would you want? Or would that even change the primary energy? So again, I'm still putting heavy emphasis on accuracy, but I want to add that deadline element to it. Now, what energy do you want? So, yep, you guys are all saying, like, I want a driven analytical, maybe an analytical driver. Driven analytical driver. Okay, yeah, very interesting. Secondary driver. My choice would be I would want a driven analytical to do my taxes because at least they've got that secondary energy that says, we need to get this done. We need to get this done now. So the analytical element is can keep things nice and accurate, and the driven secondary energy is going to keep it moving forward. So that would be my choice. Now, an analytical driver, I might just be a bit concerned that they've got some tension that's going to put them into a bit of a hurry, but I'm not worried about that. So you can give me a driven analytical or an analytical driver, and I'll be happy. Now, I could even say things to you. If you're being operated on, even if you're having your hair cut, what would you want the primary energy to be, or for the person to be experiencing when they're doing those kinds of actions? Are you more concerned about it getting done accurately? Who would you rather have a highly driven surgeon or a highly analytical surgeon? What's your choice now? Do you want a highly driven surgeon or a highly analytical surgeon? Yeah, well, some of you are kind of going like, well, I'd like a little bit of both and some amiable wouldn't hurt. That's good. But yeah, a driven analytical. I would want them to know their stuff and know that they know their stuff. I don't want to, be opened up and they suddenly go like, oh, I've never seen that before. No, no, no. So I want them to be a strong analytical. But yeah, I want them to do it right, do it fast, and so, driven analytical would certainly be my choice for that. All right, now again, you can apply the same process no matter what activity you're looking at. The question becomes, where would the best place for this task to be performed? Okay, so with that, let's put you guys to the test with this activity list. And let me make sure that the answers aren't already given here. Just one second. Oh, bummer they are. Okay, don't look at the screen real quick. All right, so activity number one is following a detailed client acquisition strategy. Following a detailed client acquisition strategy. So when it comes to following a detailed client acquisition strategy, where should this activity be on the change grid? So following a detailed client acquisition strategy. Is that primarily a driver energy, an expressive, an amiable, or an analytical energy? Which one would you pick as the primary energy? Okay. Most of you guys are saying that I'd want the driver as my primary energy. Primary energy. All right. A couple of you are going like an analytical energy because it's a process. All right. Now again, think about what's the important verb here. It's about following something. When I think about the verb following something or following a process, it means I'm really concerned about the outcome. I really want something, to happen because of this. And so I'm favoring the driver energy because we want it followed. Now, that being said, there is an it that has to be followed. And so that's that analytical piece coming into play. There is a process and a procedure, but it's the execution of the plan that is really the emphasis of this activity. So that's the mission critical bit. And so I want an analytical driver. Okay, does that make sense for everyone? An analytical driver? Yeah? Okay. Now, where is he right now? This is activity number one. Right now, Stephen is plotting right there. So see where I'm squiggling? Activity number one right here. He's on the border between a driven analytical and an analytical. So in order to move him from where he is to where I want him to be, I'm going to need to do something to boost the level of challenge he's feeling. See, right now he's going like, I got plenty of ability and it's not all that challenging. I want him to feel a little bit more challenge so that he stays on the on process and is able then to determine opportunities for refining and improving the process, etc. Okay, so an analytical driver, that would be my choice. So how do I move him? We'll talk about that in just a second. Let me give you another activity. Da, 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 da. Um, let's go. Hmm. Yeah, I want to find something that'll put you to the test on this one. Okay, because so many of these are analytical driver. Yes. Okay. Activity number 2, maintaining someone's record in Infusionsoft. So again, this is about the customer relationship management software. Right now, Steven is plotting up here the border between expressive driver and driven expressive. And we've all established that's not a great spot for this task to be performed. So where on the change grid would someone do the best job of keeping the records up to date and accurate? hmm So what do you think? What would you think the primary energy should be? Right now, expressive driver, driven expressive. Where do you think? Okay, and you guys are saying, I'm seeing, half of you say driven analytical and half of you are saying analytical driver. And the coordinates we actually chose were 10 and 6. And that's exactly in between those two. We're going like, if you really want to do the best job of updating that record, there's got to be enough drive that you get it done. And it really is just a little process. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. You just got to get in the habit of really doing it, because if you let it pile up, at the end of the day, it becomes a horrible task. So you just want to do it while you're talking to somebody. Just update whatever their file happens to be. So that's really where we want it to be. So analytical energy and driver energy both present there. Okay, now let me put everyone's minds to rest, and then we're going to talk about moving someone around. When you first, there's a reason why we give our licensed professionals those 3 private training sessions, because we want to make sure that you are actually very comfortable creating an activity list, and so we want to see your activity lists early on. So we want to work with you on creating the best activity list you possibly can. We also want to make sure that you can read a change grid and can have some real confidence in your ability to do so. So we want to help you to do that. We do that privately. We do want to make sure that you can determine the ideal location for activities to be. And we can tell you that on those ChangeWorks forum calls, we have people who have been certified in ChangeWorks for years that still love running their activity lists by us as they're establishing ideal locations. And so don't think for one moment that we abandon you. We do not. We've never abandoned anyone. We are here to provide all of you with as much support as is necessary for you to be able to use this tool effectively with your clients. And so we'll help you to determine the ideal locations, and we'll help you do this last bit too, which is put together strategies on how you can most effectively move someone around on the change grid. So with that, let's now talk about, well, how would we move someone from being an analytical driver, or rather, sorry, a driven analytical up to the analytical driver? What would we do to affect that movement, and what would we do to lower Stephen's tension or changes energy around that whole Infusionsoft piece? So with that, I'm going to go for a moment to the PowerPoint presentation. In your workbook, this is section 4, where we talk about the change grid maneuvers. Change grid maneuvers are sets of techniques that you can apply that would effectively move someone from wherever they happen to be on the change grid to wherever you want them to be on the change grid. And people can self-apply these, or we can do them with other people, and we can do it with or without their knowledge or permission. So don't think for one moment that these sorts of things aren't routinely happening with people being absolutely unaware that it's being done to them. So you can certainly say in your role as a coach or a consultant that you just want to support the person in making their own decisions and coming up with their own action plans and implementing that. And that's really very wonderful and noble and appropriate for the role that you're serving. That being said, if I am an advertising executive and I'm putting together a promotional campaign, and I'm trying to really convince people, influence people, sway people, then I'm going to be doing these techniques with or without their knowledge or permission to do so. So it happens all the time. Now, we tell you about this because as you learn about the change grid maneuvers, we want you to see them as not only a set of things that you can do to help other people, but you can also recognize when they're being done to you without your knowledge or permission so that you can recognize it and perhaps prepare to defend yourself accordingly. And so this is how tension gets managed. Now, when you went through Mastering Personal Change, we talked about two of these sets of change grid maneuvers in a good deal of detail. So how do you go about lowering tension? That was the down grid maneuvers. And how do you go about raising tension? That was the up grid maneuvers. And so I don't want to get into that in detail. I don't want to repeat what we've already covered. But let's just at least hit the highlights, and then we're going to talk about out-grid maneuvers and in-grid maneuvers. So now, if you'll remember back to Mastering Personal Change, I said to you that over the course of your lifetime, you've actually all become highly skilled tension managers. You may not have known that was happening, but that's exactly what happened. You've become highly skilled. So if I said to you, you've got a friend, a family member, a colleague, a coworker who is way, way, way up in stress, feeling totally out of control. Well, what sorts of things could you do to lower that friend, family member, colleague, or coworker's levels of tension? And we throw that out to the audience, and we get all kinds of answers that come back to us. We got things that like well, get them out of the environment. Take them for a walk. Let them sleep on it. Take some deep cleansing breaths. Visualize something far more positive and doable or whatever. And so people come up with all kinds of things that we can do to lower someone's level of tension. They go like, well, we can give them something else to think about. We could give them some resources. We could give them drugs and alcohol. That might work, you know. And so there's all kinds of things that we have learned over the course of our lifetime that could be very useful when it comes to lowering someone's level of tension. So we want to get very clear from the beginning. You all already know how to lower tension. Unfortunately, a great many of the things that we've rattled off would be considered inappropriate, perhaps even illegal, in a business setting. And so our choices get much more limited. And we ended up talking about 4 downgrid maneuvers. Those were normalize, simplify, restore resources, and add resources. And we walked our way through that and made sure all of you really understood what we mean by these 4 different types of things you could do. So I just want to check in. Do any of you have any questions at all about the downgrid maneuvers? Yep, you guys are saying, yeah, increase their sense of ability, focus on removing barriers. Yep, all those would be very effective. And they're going to fall into certain things. Like, for example, increasing my sense of ability could be about restoring resources. If you're reminding me about some capabilities that was just forgetting that I had. Remember, people up in stress can be surrounded by all sorts of resources, but the stress is preventing them from seeing them and tapping into them effectively. And so you're right. Let me increase your perception of your own of your ability. So let maybe remind you about the knowledge and skill and experience you already have, or focusing on removing barriers. That could also be about simplifying it, or even restoring resources. Let me take away some of these, and both of those could also fall in the category of adding resources. Maybe I need to teach you something you don't already know, or give you a skill you don't already have, or provide you with some sort of resource that would assist you. And one form of that could certainly be the removal of whatever those obstacles might be. And so you guys are coming up with some really, really good examples here of what we're talking about. Now, again, whenever we are applying these techniques, there are 2 things we have to know before we get started. We have to know, where is the person on the change grid right now? And we then need to know, where do we want them to be? Well, in a situation where we want them to be somewhere lower on the change grid than they're starting from, we do downgrid maneuvers. But how many downgrid maneuvers do we do, and how involved do we get with a given downgrid maneuver? Well, that's dictated by how far we're trying to move them. And so if the person is up in stress and we just want to move them to power stress, that's a very short trip. And so we just do maybe one of these downgrid maneuvers. It could be very easy. A little bit of normalizing could move someone from stress down to power stress. Whatever we do, we don't want to overshoot the destination. And so if we are up in, if the individual's up in stress, we want them to be in power stress, but we keep doing downgrid maneuver after downgrid maneuver after downgrid maneuver, and we are normalizing and simplifying and restoring and adding. And along the way, I'm also holding their hand and being soothing and all those other sorts of things that come along with lowering tension. Where could they end up? Where could they end up? if I keep on doing downgrade maneuvers, where are they going to end up? They're going to end up down in apathy. I overshot my destination. And now I've created a different problem. They may not be in stress anymore, so I don't have to deal with that. Unfortunately, now they're in apathy, and now I got to deal with that. And so we always want to monitor what's happening to the person's level of tension as we go about using any of these maneuvers. And so, if their tension's higher than I want it to be, I'll do a little bit of downgrade maneuvers to lower their level of tension just enough, and then I'll stop with them. Now, the reason why I harp upon this, and the reason why I'm reminding you all about downgrade maneuvers, is because I believe that human development professionals have a tendency to do too many downgrade maneuvers too frequently. Um, in our desire to be of service to people, to be helpful to them, and to show that we're being very supportive, we have a tendency to normalize and simplify and restore and add resources far beyond that which the situation at hand actually requires. So we have I guess, a tendency, and I honor the heart space it's coming from. So, I respect that it's all coming from a desire to be of service to someone, but we have a tendency to rescue people who are not in distress, or we have a tendency to take the tension away. Remember, from the nature of change, it all goes back to that basic principles we talked about in the very first session. The nature of change says that tension is nature's way of telling someone to pay attention to the situation. If we lower their tension, we are actually taking their attention away from that issue. And while that may be good to a certain point, again, moving someone out of stress and into power stress, if they just need to take right action, or power if we want them to slow down long enough to make a higher quality decision. But if I keep on lowering and lowering the tension, I am taking their attention further and further away. And at a certain point, that could become harmful to my client's forward movement if I'm the one who is basically um, manipulating their tension in such a way that they feel that they can take time to do what really needs to be done now. And so I'd hate to be the one who caused that issue, even if my heart was in the right place. Okay, so let's all develop an enduring respect for tension. It needs to be there if we want the person to move forward in a timely fashion. We take the tension away, we're taking the attention away. Okay, so again, I give this to you as a warning. Be very aware of how often you perform downgrade maneuvers, and always monitor your own use of downgrade maneuvers to make sure you're just given just the right amount, just enough to lower their level of tension. Okay, so that was a little bit of review on downgrade maneuvers. Anyone have any questions, comments about downgrade maneuvers, or shall we move on? Okay. All right, moving on. Upgrade maneuvers. What sorts of things raise tension? And so, again, you learned about this in detail during Mastering Personal Change. If we have a friend, a family member, a colleague, a coworker who is deep, deep, deep down in apathy, where no change really occurs, they might be existing, but they hardly are living in a vibrant kind of way. What kinds of things can we do to get them off their butt? What can we do to build a fire underneath them, to get some initiative, get them in some motion? What kinds of things can we do? Well, when you allow an audience to just come up with whatever they come up with. They come up with all kinds of things. We can yell at people. We can threaten them. We can take away something they like. We can deliver something they don't like. We can become physically aggressive with people. If they won't get off the sofa, we could get rid of the sofa. We can pull a weapon on somebody. There are countless things that we can do to raise someone's level of tension. And so, again, over the course of your lifetime, you have become experts at tension management. You know how to raise tension. Unfortunately, a great many of the things I've just described would be considered inappropriate, perhaps illegal, in a business setting. And so, what can we do in our role as professionals to raise someone's level of tension, or to help them raise their own level of tension, depending on how you look at it? Well, the list gets limited, and we have 4 upgrade maneuvers. And again, this is just a review. We covered this during Mastering Personal Change. I can increase your level of tension by increasing the standards against which you are measuring your performance. I can increase the tension by changing the task in some slight or profound way. I can raise your tension by awakening the emotions that are associated with the level of tension I want you to experience. So if you're down in apathy and I want you to be in power, power is all about pride and confidence. If I can awaken these feelings of pride and confidence in you, you will naturally move out of apathy and up into power. You'll get back on mission and purpose. I can also do it by boosting accountability. As Blanchard said, we can expect more if we inspect more. And so maybe I just need to put in place some sort of performance standard. I did that in the first bullet point, and now I got to hold your feet to the fire. I got to make sure there's a judgment day. So boosting that accountability. Now, any one of these or combination of these will effectively raise someone's level of tension. But just as was the case for downgrade maneuvers, before I do anything, I need to answer two questions. Number one, where is this person on the change grid? And number two, where do I want them to be, or where would be better for them? And now that I know those starting points and desired finishing points, I see the gap and I see the relative physical positions of them, and so it tells me what direction do I need to move someone. And so um, I may very well need to raise someone's level of tension, but how far? Do I need just a little bit of an upgrade maneuver, or do I need a certain combination of them? What is it that I'm going to actually blend together that's going to move them where I want them to be? If I'm not careful, though, in fact, one of my general criticisms for management and leadership behaviors in large organizations that I've worked with is that they all seem to understand the desired, the starting point. They all seem to understand the current situation. They know that their people are not performing as well as they want them to perform. They're not as productive as they want their people to be. So I get it. Their people are further down grid, but they don't think about where should they be. They just go, we need more tension. We need to build a fire. And so they start doing upgrade maneuvers. Now, they're not doing it consciously. They're just doing what they're doing, but they're doing upgrade maneuvers. And they keep on doing more and more and more of them. And as they do more and more of these upgrade maneuvers, they're raising and raising and raising the level of tension. Sooner or later, where is the person going to end up if they keep on getting subjected to a nonstop barrage of upgrade maneuvers? Where are they going to end up? They're going to end up in stress. And now I've got a different problem. They may not be in apathy anymore. Now they're in stress. And so I got another mess to clean up. So Deb is saying, would a deadline boost accountability? Well, certainly, I think that without a deadline, there isn't any accountability. And so we say that in order for accountability to work, there has to be a clearly defined set of performance standards. So that is, I'm going to X to this specific level by this particular date. So usually we want those three little elements. So what's being done, how am I going to quantify what's being done, and what's the deadline? Now, those of you that are doing training in smart coaching and or other smart goals and all that, there's other things you could add to it. But to me, those are the basics. I got to know what needs to be done, how much of that do I need to do, and by when. So those three elements, I think, really are just kind of fundamental to that. But you're absolutely right. The moment I put in a deadline, I am raising their level of tension, and that deadline is falling into that category of accountability. Okay. Public accountability and utilizing natural competitiveness are often useful. This is absolutely right. So, but one way or another, I want to boost the accountability. Natural competitiveness is about awakening emotions and changing the task. For example, all sales contests are ways of changing the task. The task is still the same. Go out there and sell stuff. But when a contest is introduced, now it becomes win the contest. Well, I can only win the contest by selling stuff. So I'm still out there selling stuff, but that introduction of the contest changed the task in some way. And that change suddenly made it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more engaging. So when I think about natural competitiveness, I think I'm changing the task, and I think I'm awakening those emotions of pride and confidence that people in a competitive situation are likely to feel if they've got any hope of prevailing. Okay, so now again, the warning, know where you're trying to move them to. Don't do any more of these maneuvers than absolutely necessary. Okay, one moment. So sorry. So now, When we're talking about mastering personal change and basics of tension management, all we ever talk about are upgrade and downgrade maneuvers. If you took a sales training program that's all centered on tension management, we would say to you, if your prospect is not bought from you, you need to keep raising their tension until they do. And you need to try different things that will ultimately make them active, will help them hit their threshold of activation. So you just got to keep doing more. And if they haven't bought, you haven't done enough. Keep doing more. And so it's just this very kind of primitive way of looking at things. If I want someone to do something, they have to be at their threshold. If they aren't doing it, they're not at their threshold. Raise tension until they do it. Also, on the flip side, the downgrade maneuvers, if I want someone to let go, I have to get them down to their threshold of delegation where they'll just release their control over that kind of thing. If they haven't let go, their tension's not low enough yet. So I got to keep on doing downgrade maneuvers until they let go. And so these very simple ways of applying tension management really don't require anything beyond the upgrade and downgrade maneuvers. One moment. Oh, my. Um, and so, for the vast majority of the people we work with, this is plenty. But when we are talking to human development professionals, we say there's a lot more they have to know. Because in our work, it is not enough to simply get someone to hit a threshold and do what happens at that threshold. That's almost, I think manipulating is a little bit too strong of a word, but it's manipulation. I'm the one who's raising and lowering somebody else's level of tension. Maybe they want me to do that, maybe they don't, but that's what I'm doing, and I'm just doing it so you hit whatever the threshold is. We're trying to develop people. We're trying to help people be more functioning, someone really taking more control for themselves. And so I'm going to talk to you about in-grid and out-grid maneuvers. Now, um, as to kind of set the stage for that, earlier today I said to you that the reason why Stephen needs to be moved upgrid about so many of those activities is because I didn't manage him properly. So we say that when people are plotting too far downgrid, they're downgrid because there is a management issue, an unaddressed management issue. And so all these upgrade maneuvers, increasing standards, changing the task, awakening emotions, boosting accountability, this falls into the domain of you, the manager, when you're doing these things. I'm trying to manage the person. On the flip side, the downgrade maneuvers, the reason why someone is so far upgrade is because their perceived ability is much lower than the challenge requires. And so this person needs training. The reason why they're upgrade is because they haven't received the training that they need. They don't have the knowledge, the skill, the experience, the resources, whatever it is they need in order to be able to do this task. And so we say that the downgrade maneuvers resolve a training issue. Well, now we've got in-grid and out-grid to look at. And I'm going to show you the maneuvers, but I need you to see a layer of the change grid so you can see what we're really trying to do. Okay, let me go here. Let me change the background image. It probably logged me out, so let me just jump back in there again. Log in, dashboard, view the profiles. This is the one I want. Get the change grid, select all activities, and view the change grid. And you will all get this fast at it. And we want to see the engagement layer. Okay. All right. So now I want you to be reminded that change occurs in only two areas on the change grid: upgrid changes and outgrid changes. Upgrade changes are driven by external factors. So my level of tension keeps getting moved up because the performance standards are being increased, because the task is being changed, because accountability is being put in place. These things that are outside of me are pushing my level of tension higher and higher and higher till I finally hit that threshold and I take that definitive action. So upgrade changes are driven by external factors. On the other hand, outgrid changes. Outgrid changes are driven by internal factors. So I have enough drive that I have chosen to formulate an intention to become engaged, to execute on what needs to be done. I'm the one who's driving this. So I don't need those external things to be managing me. I am the one who is driving my own bus. I'm the captain of my own destiny. And so when we talk about human development, I think part of human development is saying to people, why should you wait until something outside of you pushes your situation, pushes you in that situation to the point that now you've got no choice but to do what needs to be done or suffer the consequences? Why do we want to do that? I mean, that's not really an evolved way of operating. We instead say to people, we want to help you to determine what's really most important for you. What do you want to accomplish? Why is that so important to you? What do you think is going to come out of that? We want you to become that master of your own destiny. And so, for us to really help people develop, we want to focus more on movement on this grid. So, yeah, if you're down in apathy, I definitely need to raise your level of tension. But then I got to, when you get up here to power, I need to get you to turn right. I need you to get more engaged. Or if you're way up in stress because you don't know what to do, I need to provide you with that training so that your level of tension will come down, down, down. But once you get to this mid grid area, I need you to turn out grid. I need you to become more self determining and all that. So we really want to help people move from being dependent on external driving forces to internal driving forces. Okay, so now, um, so we're going to be looking at outgrid maneuvers. Now, outgrid maneuvers are about boosting someone's level of drive, and obviously, you can see drive here. Awareness leads to intention, intention to engagement, engagement, execution. My drive is increasing. I'm going from being an amiable, very far in grid, to a driven amiable, to an amiable driver, and ultimately a driven driver. We even hear that word drive is increasing as we move further and further out grid. And so, how do I get someone to move out grid? Well, just like upgrid maneuvers resolve management issues and downgrid maneuvers resolve training issues, outgrid maneuvers resolve leadership issues. And so, in order to move someone out grid, I need to serve as a leader for them and ultimately help them to become a leader for themselves. And so, a leader is all about awakening desire. A leader is all about having and sharing a vision. A leader is all about feeling that sense of mission and vision and purpose that you are connected with, and with great feelings of pride and confidence and all those things that are happening out grid. So I need that leadership to be there. The reason why I'm plotting too far in grid is because I need that leader contributor to come in and help me to move further out grid. So when I look at Steven's um, grid as it is right now, for a lot of these activities, he needs both up grid maneuvers and out grid maneuvers. So something to the manager needs to do something to increase the expectations, change the task, set those new standards, etc. But then I also need to move him out grid by talking about, vision, mission, purpose, etc. So now let me go through those maneuvers with you, and then you can see how this all comes together. So I'll go back to the PowerPoint presentation for just a second. So what kinds of things increase drive? Well, I'll give you a few little quotes from our Pride-Based Leadership program, and you can see what direction this is heading. We say, leaders believe in people before they believe in themselves. Leaders are people who will say to you, give it a try. I believe that you'll be able to succeed. That they see in you some potential that you may not be able to see in yourself. Leaders are also very interested in the spotlight being put on you. And so this is really all about you, your role, your mission, vision, purpose, your role in helping the overall mission, vision, and purpose become realized. And so this is what we really are trying to do. So what can we do? These are the 4 things that we can do to move someone out grid. So number 1, increase the risk that they are exposed to. And again, I believe in people before they believe in themselves. I see their potential in ways and in places that they never dreamt were really there. So as I get them to see my vision of them and get them to start to share in that vision and start to own a little bit of the vision for themselves, this is what we're trying to affect. So I want them to say, hey, if what kind of company would you always want to work with? And this is, if you guys are going to be going through Master Stream Essentials, we'll actually give this to you as an exercise. But let's say, all right, so, what would your perfect client list look like? And don't just tell me the kinds of people who would be on it. Name them. Who should be on your client list? If you're working with organizations, name the companies you'd like to see on your client list. So don't just go, oh, I'd like companies with more than 5,000 employees doing more than blah, blah. I want you to name the companies because I believe you can go and get them. So why not take the risk? If I've got to pick up the phone and call people anyway, why shouldn't I call the CEO of a corporation that's beyond what I think I could possibly handle? So in my role as a leader or as a self leader, I got to encourage myself to take risk. I have to see myself as being capable of doing more than I ever dreamt I could. Another thing that we're going to do to move you out grid is to appeal to your ego. So we want you to recognize that the world has been waiting for you to make this realization, to step into this role, to get engaged and start taking action on whatever the quest happens to be. So I want you to recognize that it is all about you, and that this is not just about you becoming the best you that you can be, but becoming the best you that others need you to be as well. And so let's appeal to that ego. That'll move you outward. That'll make you more courageous. That'll get you more, move from intention to engagement, etc. I need to inspire you through leadership to become a leader yourself. And so, yep, I'm happy to get you moving. I'm happy to demonstrate for you what these leadership skills are really all about, but I need you to now start duplicating those leadership behaviors as a tool for self management, but also as you go about working with other people on the team or perhaps outside of the immediate organization or whatever. So I need to inspire you through a leadership role. The more of a leader you view yourself as being, the further and further out grid you move. At a certain point in time, a little dose of humility might need to be put in place, but that's an in grid maneuver because we don't want you to be too far out grid in that danger zone where you become the bull in the china shop. And then the last thing that we do to move people out grid is we provide that coaching. Again, I'm talking specifically about performance coaching. So we're being very specific about what are the mission critical activities, how are you currently performing them, where are the opportunities for you to do it even better, how do I help you get ready to do precisely that. And so as we start doing this, it's like we're equipping you for battle. We're equipping you to win whatever the event happens to be. And so there is a certain excitement that comes along with that. There is a devotion that comes along to the achievement of that desired outcome. And so everyone can benefit from coaching, but no one will benefit from coaching quite as much as that person who is well on their way to achieving what they want most. In fact, one of the programs we do for the ChangeWorks community builders is called The Accountable Self. And its subtitle is Becoming a Finisher in a World of Starters. We talk about people conquering the 80% existence. So often we have clients, or we ourselves know that we're capable of far more than we've actually accomplished, or we see ourselves getting most of the way to reaching most of our goals most of the time. But what about getting all the way to reaching all of our goals all of the time? It is that performance coaching that closes that gap. So these are the outgrid maneuvers. And so this is about that person initially serving as your leader and then you duplicating those things for yourself and for others. So these are the outgrid maneuvers. So here's what we believe works really, really well from a practical perspective. Whenever you have someone who is plotting too far down grid or too far up grid, Here's what the formula is. So for Stephen here, we want to do some upgrade maneuvers around whatever these activities happen to be. We want to increase the standards, change the task, awaken emotions, boost accountability. Let's do some of those upgrade maneuvers that will move him up to power. And once he's in power, we now want him to move out grid. So then I want to start kicking in some of those. Okay, great. Now that you're back in the game, let's increase the risk. Let's make sure that you view yourself the way that we view you. Let's make sure that that ego is working in a nice, positive kind of way. Let's make sure that you are stepping up, taking the reins, becoming the leader. And I'm here to provide you with whatever coaching and guidance you need along the way. And so we're going to basically do both of those maneuvers. In Stephen's case, I would do them in sequence. Let's first do the upgrade maneuvers and then do the outgrid maneuvers. But you could also do them as a blend. So do a little bit of both of those and you can kind of zigzag your way to the desired area. If he was too far upgrid, we would do something similar, but we'd be doing the downgrid maneuvers first. So I'm going to teach you what you need to know, make sure you've got the ability, and then we want to make sure you turn outgrid so that you can become more internally driven to do these things that need to be done. Okay, let's see, any comments on this? I have to want the prize. Is the pain of winning worth the gain? Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right. Let's see, any other questions, comments around this? Okay, now that leaves us with this last set of maneuvers, and these are in-grid maneuvers. Let me go back to my PowerPoint presentation. The in-grid maneuvers are maneuvers that you will do very infrequently. Perhaps you will be fortunate enough to rarely, if ever, need to do these. Generally speaking, um, the in-grid maneuvers are used only when someone is in the out-grid danger zone. So if they're plotting so far out-grid that they've become the bull in the china shop, that they are damaging relationships around them, that their confidence has become arrogance, then we may need to sit down with them and perform some in-grid maneuvers. Now, in-grid maneuvers resolve counseling issues. So somehow or another, this individual has been allowed to behave in the ways that they are behaving and get away with it. And what we need to do is come along there and say, you know what? While we appreciate all that drive, all that outgrid energy, you crossed a line. And now we need to do something about that. So what do we do to move someone in grid? Well, there are four things that we can do. Number one, we can reduce the risk that they are exposed to. So if we think they're taking too big of a chance, we pull them back in. If we think they are moving too quickly, we slow them down. We do something in order to reduce that risk. And mostly we're just doing it because we say, as hard as you're pushing, you're just going to be damaging things. Let's just slow down a little bit. Sometimes to go faster, we need to slow down. So we just want to back off a little bit. So let's get the person out of that high risk situation. Second thing we do is appeal to their nobler motives. Usually, the reason why we've been asked to do in-grid maneuvers is because this individual has trampled on the feelings of other people. They've offended other people. We've got people complaining. We've got people that are more concerned about the relationship than they are about the work at hand, and they've even misbehaved in some way that raises a couple of legal flags. Sometimes we just need to remind these people that no matter how great you are, how successful, how accomplished you are, Mr. Driven Driver, you didn't get there alone. You got there on the efforts of a lot of people who supported you. You might have had the idea, but it's because other people have been supporting you that you've been able to do what you've actually been able to do. So we want to appeal to their nobler motives and let them know that they need to share their successes and they need to acknowledge and appreciate what people are doing, and they need to respect that people have got more to do with their own life than humoring you or whatever you're thinking of them. And so getting them to appeal to their nobler motives. The third thing we can do is review boundaries. If you have crossed a line and you have now done something that is pulling the company into harm's way, then we need to sit down and talk about boundaries and review those boundaries with you and let you know what the consequences are of boundary violations, etc. So this again will move you there. And you can actually watch when you do these in-grid maneuvers. Don't be at all surprised to watch the person begin by being defensive at first because they never think they've done they've done anything wrong. And then um, they will start to appear as though they are the victim. People don't understand them. That wasn't their intention. They didn't. Don't people get what we're trying to do? How come no one understands me? Blah blah blah. So they go from being this, belligerent, pushy kind of person to being like they're the victim. Poor, poor, poor me. No one understands me. And so you'll watch this dynamic. And on one of our forum calls, we'll talk about why that's so predictable in the behavior set. And then the last one is increase introspection. Increase introspection just means sometimes we need to get the person to start looking at what is compelling them to behave in the way they're behaving. Now, for a lot of human development professionals, they feel that this particular line item is beyond their role. That this really requires someone who's got a stronger background or a more, how about official background or a license in some kind of counseling technique, therapy, psychology, sociology, social work, whatever it is. They often want to hand off to that. In a corporate setting, if this is where we're at, you would probably have already engaged someone on the HR side of things anyway. So point is, I want you to be aware that there are these in-grid maneuvers that could be done with great benefit in a certain set of circumstances, but hopefully you will have little, if any, occasion to really use these. So most of our work is about moving people up grid, down grid, and out grid, and usually in combination. Now, again, as you start to use the ChangeGrid with your clients, we know that you're going to want to walk through one or two or three of these with us before you go out there and try to do it on your own. So you must never hesitate, as someone who's licensed to do this, to call and ask us questions. Say, "I'd love to get your thoughts about my activity list," or "I'd love to show you a ChangeGrid and get your take on it," or "I'd love to strategize with you how we can go about moving this individual or this group of people from where they are to where they want to be." Those calls we find very interesting to do, and we love, 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 love doing that. So that's basically the material that we wanted to cover in ChangeWorks Essentials. So obviously it's essential stuff to know. So let me just check in. Oh, got some comments here. Since Stephen understands all the techniques you can apply, how does that knowledge affect your use of the methodology? Well, it actually allows us to do it together. And so well, I would much rather that Stephen become self-aware, self-managing, self-leading, because honestly, I've got other things I'd rather be doing. And so, and he is a subject matter expert. He knows this stuff. And so I would much rather support him in applying this stuff to himself. So there's no reason to hide any of this stuff. And the other thing is that we are governed by a particular philosophy. We believe that by equipping people with this knowledge, they will help them in all areas of their life. And so even when I'm on a sales call, I would still feel compelled to say to them, let me just tell you where you are on the grid right now and where it is that you're going to need to be if you're going to do something about this situation. And so sometimes I'll even teach a prospect about the 5 levels of tension and how we go about managing tension so they can recognize that they're down in apathy and that's the problem. Let's see. Yeah, description. Yeah, Betty, we have a program called Pride-Based Leadership, and our largest corporate clients just gobble it all up because we believe that the world has lost sight of what leadership really is. Leadership has now become some generic term for a whole set of behaviors. And if you start to look at those behaviors, you go, these behaviors are not unique to leadership. These behaviors belong to a manager, belong to everybody. Like one survey was done that revealed that the number one leadership skill that people thought was going to be important moving forward was creativity. Well, first of all, I'm not so sure that creativity is a skill, but okay, I'll grant for the discussion's sake that it is. Are we really saying that only leaders should be creative? Really? So shouldn't everybody be creative? That's not a leadership skill. Well, it's not a skill, and if it is a skill, it shouldn't be limited to leaders. And so that's not it. So in pride-based leadership, we talk about what are the actual five key skills of leadership. And then when we start to do this, companies start realizing that they are doing none of them more often than not. Maybe they're doing one or two of them, but they have a real deficit in their true leadership behaviors. And I say, so you guys are carrying leadership titles and y'all think of yourselves as leaders, but all you really are a bunch of glorified managers. So you really want to be a leader, you got to do the following five things. If you don't do these five things, you're not a leader. So you might be a great manager, you might be a great person, you might be a fantastic entrepreneur, but you're not a leader. So let's really explore that. So we get into that in grand detail. So mostly all we need to do is increase awareness. Well, I think that's it. When it comes to a lot of the work that we do, particularly with people that are already forward moving, we like to help people who are already helping themselves. We just need to encourage them. So we want to make them aware, help them to formulate those intentions, help them to look at their mission critical activities and get engaged in doing those. So hopefully you guys see all this all fits together. Anyway, have any questions, comments, thoughts? Let's see. Betty's got quite a comment here. Leaders are at all levels in an organization, and I can see that using the grid with the participation of the client can help them take ownership of their growth more rapidly. Many thanks. You're absolutely right, and you're welcome for doing that. Bob says great content. Thank you so much for the compliment, Bob. Do appreciate that. Again, thank you all for participating in ChangeWorks Essentials. We do hope you're finding a lot of personal value in this, and you'll use what we've taught you to do an even more effective job of using your personal ChangeGrid. And again, for those of you on the professional track, please feel free to give us a call. We're happy to answer any questions you have about how you might be able to integrate this into your business practice. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.